It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in our Fanzine Friday series. Today we're taking a look at Orcs Revenge number 3. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer. This is our channel, Old School Rules, a place for everyone that loves classic RPGs and anyone who wants to learn more about them. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, I take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look, and today, from July of 1985, this is Orcs Revenge number 3. Hope you enjoyed the video. So each week we're taking a look at another one of these fanzines from the UK. It's called Orcs Revenge. It's the size we're sort of used to from over there, sort of more of a square size. A slightly heavy stock cover here. This issue, it's a yellowish gold color, paper folded in half and stapled down the side. Cover art this time, let's go ahead and pop forward to that. You might recognize one of my favorite D&D fanzine artists. This is Hudson Shaw, who's drawn this. He always does a lot of anthropomorphic animals. And so here we have this lion who looks like he's getting ready to be in a wrestling match, according to the note that's up here. Has no tie-in at all to anything that's inside the fanzine itself. Speaking of that, let's take a look at this. A very large table of contents. It spills all the way over to the other side of the page here. Editorial and table of contents. Communication, which is Communications and Traveler. Chit Chat is sort of a short editorial about the world of fanzines. The Shadow, I think, is a tongue-in-cheek monster. The review of the game Bushido. Orc Talk is their letters column, which is very, I'll say, interactive. It's people writing in and commenting on the prior issues and going through sort of article by article and giving some feedback. An article on proficiency, the use of an alternate rule set for proficiency in D&D. Alchemist Larder is their new magic items, but in particular tended to be a lot of new potions. And you'll see in the letters column that was criticized, and this is going to be the last issue of that, I suppose, or episode when we have this. A Bit of a Moan is another short, sort of like an editorial, occult and RPGs, talking about that sort of Satanic Panic phenomena. Intrigue on binges, I think that's the name of a planet. This is a traveler scenario. A little article for Warhammer, the Games Workshop fantasy RPG, and Metal Miniatures campaign, or Metal Miniatures tabletop. The Sun Was Dying is fiction. Dragonmeet is sort of a report from their trip to this convention. Coinage of the Realm article for your D&D game about coins. Will Demons Draw Fold is just a, as they say, sensationalist title for their fanzine review, and meaningless mutterings at the end here is just subscriptions and how to send in your potential articles and artwork, etc. In terms of our contributors here, you see that this list has gotten a little larger. Mac, Gavin, Ken, and Chris are responsible for this fanzine. Then we've got article by Mark Stockton, Alistair Woodward, and then artwork Hudson Shaw, Graham Anderson, Pete Rasa, Nick Barber, just the name, Odema, and Morris Williams. Here's our editorial. As he mentions, they're getting a quite robust letters column at this point. Not ready to release their questionnaire results. They didn't really get enough responses in at the time this went to press, so they're holding on for that. A little bit of mention that they'd been to Dragonmeet. I think all 4 of them went, and there's a bit of a story, you know, that trip, which we'll have in an article back here when they talk about it. They indicate that this issue is a bit hardware-ish, and there's clearly, and you'll hear this again as we talk our way through this one, some issues in the zine world about chat versus hardware, and what are you, and how much of each or other should you have, and so on. Seems to be a big deal, at least in the minds of the guys who are putting this together. And they mentioned that people complained about the artwork in the last issue. If you remember, they asked for artwork, and then they got some, and there was some naked breasts in there on a couple of the pieces of art, and people said that was sexist, and they said, well, they weren't trying to do that. And so they apologized sort of for that. They have their own table of contents with a little bit of information here as well. And again, this is on the back page. It tells you this is the July 1985 issue. Communication is discussion about communication in the Traveler campaign, and he's got all these different ways that people might try to communicate, including, in particular, right, his idea is, how do you send sort of encrypted or secret communications in an interstellar campaign? You want the message to get there, you don't want it to be intercepted, or if it is intercepted, you don't want it to be able to be read by someone who's not the intended recipient, etc. Chit chat. So here Gavin Cameron wants to talk about the different type of players, and he says you've got what they call Irvings, which I think are like these young players who are like maybe overly enthusiastic, very focused on, quote, winning by like having good characters with high stats and all kinds of magic items and so forth. And then role players who don't really care about what their stats are, and they really enjoy the act of role-playing their characters. They're sort of in it for the drama, if you will, of it. And he wants to indicate that he thinks there's a third type called the skill player, which is a hybrid between the two. Someone who doesn't mind having a weakness and enjoys the challenge of figuring out how to play and use the character's skills, but without trying to make their characters sort of all-powerful so that they can't lose, if that makes sense. So I guess that's okay. Bushido. Clearly this game, what I see in fanzine press is this game got a lot of attention and a lot of buzz, and a lot of people took a look at it. And a lot of people, I think, came away with the similar bottom line conclusion, which is it's very interesting. I think it's professionally done. And most people probably aren't going to play this game, is the takeaway I got here. Frank Herbert has this little, there's artwork by Hudson Shaw. There's a little review here of Heretics of Dune, the book. Said he liked the other Dune books and thought this would be a good one. And he's looking forward to whatever comes next in that Dune series. Orc Talk. This is their letter column, and I am finding it to be one of my favorite parts of the fanzine. It's really interactive. Part of that is the way they've edited this to make it topical, right? So they take an issue and they get everybody's thoughts on that, and then they move on to another issue. First thing they want to talk about is, the readers who've written in of talking about, is the article on Ents. I think most people generally were saying they liked the idea, that it was well done, very useful, and more of that kind of thing would be helpful for folks in interesting kind of articles to read. Then they had the article, remember, I think that article on crossbows and daggers, and people thought that was interesting as well, that the game was a little too bland and needed some fleshing out around those ideas. And then I think there was one person who wrote in who thought the article sort of wasn't needed and that they didn't really understand the reality back in the day, and thought that longbows actually were a superior weapon, did more damage, and so on and so forth, and so that the stats in D&D actually were pretty good. And the guy named John Breakwell has written in what he's calling the PHB Player's Handbook number 2, which I think is Unearthed Arcana. I suppose that's what he's writing in about, because he says they're going to have new rules for archery, point blank range, give you better to hit and damage, some more specialization and so forth. That will be improvements on how official D&D rules on combat will work. Next, they talk about their cameos. If you remember, the cameo is sort of a adventure idea, right? There's not, the maps aren't there, nothing's statted out. It's just sort of telling you this is what the adventure is. Here's the challenge or the quest or whatever it is you're going to do. And they did those for different games, not just Dungeons and Dragons. I think they had one for Call of Cthulhu in there as well. And these guys are saying, like, I like that. Mature DM just really needs the good idea, doesn't need the whole thing drawn out. They're going to edit it anyway, which I thought was good. Then we come to Alchemist's Larder, which is their sort of potions, new potion ideas, and it gets relatively roundly criticized by people who say it's not worth the paper, it's not well done, the ideas aren't that creative, etc. And as you'll see in a minute, they take that to heart and decide not to keep doing that article or that idea anymore after this issue. They had the article about languages, which was actually about sign language, meaning like between assassins or thieves or whatever. and speaking with plant spells. And interestingly, someone else said, I had just written an article just like that. And then I read yours and felt like, well, people are going to think I copied, so I haven't submitted it anywhere. Which is, again, I thought was interesting because not at all what I thought their languages article was going to be about. The article on drinking and intoxication, I think they indicate here maybe it was sort of supposed to be tongue-in-cheek, but they statted stuff out as if it was a real proposed rule. And I think other people thought it was pretty good and, the kind of concept that they would enjoy, causing penalties and stuff for people who go to a tavern and decide to drink a lot rather than just letting them get away with it and act drunk. They're going to actually impose penalties on you. And finally, they like the improvement in the artwork, even though still wasn't enough, I think was the general consensus there. Ken Okamura has an article on proficiencies, and he's essentially, it's sort of like proficiencies. I think of it more like skill points for weapons. So like fighters would get 8 to start with. Other sub-fighters like rangers and paladins get 6. Magic users get 5. Thieves, assassins get 6. Monks get 3. Druids, for some reason, get 8. And then when they, anytime they would normally get an extra weapon proficiency, they get more points. And you can load those points into the same weapon or to other weapons. And then he's got this chart here you can see where you spend points to improve your proficiency, and that's cumulative. So the first point gives you a -1 modifier to your weapon. The second point gets you to 0 modifier to when you rolled a hit. If you spend 2 more points, you'd get a +1. If you'd spend 4 more points, you'd get a +2. And if you spend 8 more points, you get a +3. That's looking at the fighter, and you can sort of apply that logic throughout the chart. I think it's okay. I mean, I think it's the general idea you see, which is a desire to be able to make someone like really, really good with a particular weapon and have that reflected in their to hit rolls, or to be, obviously not do that and be diverse, but to give more variety. I also like the idea here of giving fighters more. I might even give fighters more of a benefit, right? Because thinking like Gary did about game balance and things like that, what I notice is the generic fighter class is one of those that is, for experienced players, I'd say in disfavor. And so I like coming up with ways to say, you don't have to be a ranger or a paladin, like just be a fighter. And here's why, because a fighter will actually be, since they don't get any of those special abilities, they really need to be a much superior combat class, is my view of that. And I suppose, the counterbalance to that is, well, look, if you're rolling 3 or 4 d6 like you normally would, the reality is that most people just don't have the stats to be a ranger or a paladin, so you're going to have to pick a fighter by default, even though it's not as good it's an inferior sort of kit in a way, which I guess is a fair comment as well. Alchemist Larder, what they basically say is, we don't have time to do this anymore, people didn't like it, and so we're not going to keep putting out these potions. Their final comment is thinking about how often you put potions and other magic items into the treasure hoard, and shouldn't what's the chance that the monster actually broke the vial or whatever, and so it's ruined. And if the monster's smart enough to recognize that's something of value and they don't break it, shouldn't they actually try to use it? Again, I think it presupposes somebody has to figure out what the heck the thing is, right? Because a potion could be harmful as well as helpful, or causes, side effects that a monster totally wouldn't want. Okay, a bit of a moan. So this is their discussion, very brief, about how zines get labeled, hardware, chatty, and he's saying how people have very clear opinions. I think the gist is that there's sort of a movement at this time to say hardware zines are, have no longer sort of the cool thing, and chat zines are where it's at, and I think they're being referred to that way, and they're sort of like, we don't know why that is because we think we have both, and you guys should think we're good or whatever. I don't get it. It's a very good, I think, fanzine. I like the blend. They try to say, hey, we got a little bit of both, and that's a good thing, and I tend to think that's true also. Anyway, A little insight to what was going on at the time. And speaking of which, here's our comment on the Satanic Panic and how the folks over in the UK were like, that's basically a USA problem, those idiots over there and their religious zealots. And then they're like, but apparently it's not just their problem, because now we've got some guy, the Reverend Holmes Clue, who has been fighting fantasy books, the choose your own adventure books that Games Workshop put out, or Livingston and Jackson from Games Workshop put out. And then there's some other ladies out there trying to stirring up trouble, complaining about this stuff. So, travel scenario, Intrigue on binges, I think that's the name of the planet. And they've got a whole little section here for this campaign. You end up, this planet doesn't have any atmosphere, and so your encounters require you to sort of go, through these interconnected, climate-controlled, atmosphere-generated pods and try and work your way through. It's nice to see, these guys really had an interest in a lot of different role-playing games. A little advertisement for the model shop, and then an article on Warhammer, which I haven't seen, if at all, much in any of these RPG fanzines. And anyway, he still has the old version of Warhammer. He knows there's a new version that's come out here in the early 80s, and he's talking about some simplified rules for combat of your characters that'll help it move a little more quickly. Again, it's a lot of math. You add up points, offense and defense, and compare them, and then you figure out what's going on with damage and so forth. Then we've got, for the first time in this fanzine, a little fiction by Ken Okamura. And it's a futuristic sci-fi thing where there are these sunspots, and then the weather's changing and it's getting colder, and it's obvious effect on climate, effect on food, people are starving, society's breaking down kind of thing. And basically like a new ice age is coming along. It's a decent little story. All right, this was quite fun. Article from Mark on going to Dragonmeet. And what I found interesting about it was they're kind of, so one thing I learned is that these guys, I think it was maybe in the letters column, they mentioned this in the side, they're only like 16, or at least the one of them was only like 16 years old. If that's true, if these guys are like, teenagers in high school putting out this quality product, I am so impressed, because it is really, really well done. And we've had some that were clearly done by guys who, younger teenage types, and you could sort of tell in the way they wrote and the kind of things they did. These guys, I candidly would have thought were maybe more like college aged, given the quality of what they did. So kudos to them. So anyway, so they get to Dragonmeet, and they're frustrated. They say it's hot, and they're trying to find their way around. And they left some fanzines with some people and said, "Sell these for us." And then they went off to do other things and came back, and then they were upset because they were like, "Where's our money?" Because their fanzines are gone. They're like, "Oh, I don't know where they went," And then two of them leave. I think 2 or 3 of them leave, and the other one stays, and does manage to not only sell some more of their fanzines, but also get to meet a lot of other people that are in that sort of fanzine world, which then, of course, those guys did not get to do. And then they talk about when they left, they ended up going to a McDonald's, I think they said, and meeting some people that had been at the convention and managed to sell them some fanzines. And so that was a good thing. Coinage of the Realm, which is a discussion about the coins that would use in your D&D campaign. And so this one approaches it from the very realistic point of view that wouldn't different societies, cities have their own coins with their own imprint, and maybe in that area they'll only use your coin. So you can't just show up with a gold piece, right? Because as he says, in reality, like how much gold is in that, how pure is the gold, how much does it weigh? That would be of different values, and if you took gold from one place to another, they would want to figure that out. They wouldn't just take any. This is sort of like, there's not a universal gold piece that everyone uses, and even if there were, wouldn't there be people who would try and fake that and figure out ways to cheat, and maybe layer it in gold, but not have it be solid or whatever? All of which is true. The one thing that I did like about this article, where I thought it actually would be useful, would be to have places where they make you change your coins. So you show up with like Eastern gold pieces, and there's a money changer there at the door, so he sort of taxes you, gives you their gold pieces. That's a good way to sort of part the party from some of their money every time they go anywhere. So that might be fun. But too much of this realism, I think, can be, too much. Okay. My other favorite part about these, they do a really good job with review of other zines. And if nothing else, when the reviews are fun. And they tell me about a whole bunch of zines, including some I've never even heard of before. So I always like to take some time and talk about that. Okay, first fanzine into the chute, Blood, Guts, and Beer. I don't have it. I definitely would like some copies of this one. He says this is a newish zine from Barry Adkins. This is issue 3. Nice article on D&D Magic by Don Turnbull. Letter column. Friendly character, good artwork, and says obviously one of the reasons is because the editor, him or herself, is actually able to draw as well. Dagon, which I am familiar with, it is a Call of Cthulhu fanzine, probably the preeminent Call of Cthulhu fanzine from this time period. Droon Kroll is a mega weirdly named zine produced partly the efforts of someone who's been involved in the fandom for quite a while. He said this is only issue 2. The article is well written, a lot of subjects, short story, and he likes what this guy's putting together. They covered Car Wars, AD&D scenario, and some other reviews. So there's a good one. Had never heard of that before. Add that to my list. I called it amazing. He suggests it's I'm a zine, like I am a fanzine, or I guess Amazine. But Pete previously known as the Pete Tamlin Fan Club newsletter, he said, 10 or so issues ago. Pardon me, can't talk today. And he says this one is fantasy role playing and play by mail, and covers a bunch of things. I think, like I said, I have 1 or 2 issues of this I haven't looked at. They're just sort of like number 6 and 16 or something like that, and I haven't looked through them because I'm still trying to just put that collection together. The Journal of Senseless Carnage Society, which I do have all of those. Long name, good price. This is at this point at issue 9. It's at this point we find that the editor has been deserted by all the other people who were helping him put it together, but he's still doing a good job of putting it together. Covers AD&D, a number of other things. Next up is Out of the Mist, a combination of Shadowfire and Mystic Crystal, he says. I've got Shadowfire and I've got Out of the Mist. I knew it was the same person. I don't know about this Mystic Crystal fanzine, so that's another one I'm going to have to look for. Next is the Role Player's Karma Sutra. And he says, yes, with a title like that, it can hardly be anything but really not very good. The artwork and the layout are pretty bad. The editor claims this issue 2 was an improvement over issue 1, so I dread to think what that first one was like. The other thing this zine suffers from is lack of pages. It's only 20 pages long. Maybe if it gets support, it'll finally get better. Superhero UK is one he mentioned last time, and he continues to think it is the best superhero fanzine. Tempestuous Orifice, he says he's got. He seemed to think, positive things about it, said he hadn't read it before, so I think maybe there was just a little, I don't say jealousy, but, rivalry going on with them in the earlier issues when they said something about that. He thinks it's quite good. It's, as he says, it's already up to issue 7, so you would kind of expect it to be good quality at that point. Next is Wolfsbane. He says this is a new fanzine, unreduced A5 size, and he says they plan to cover a lot of fiction as well as some information about role-playing games. And again, he says this one is definitely worse than Out of the Mist and Droon Kroll, but maybe, they'll get better over time. Dead Elf, another fanzine. He said about the fourth one he's seen. Since this one has pale green, it must have been like the color to use. But he says Dead Elf is more of a chatty one, at least this one, which was issue number 5. And I think they did not give Orcs Revenge number 1 a good review. Nonetheless, he thinks this one's okay. He did mention, speaking of Orcs Revenge, that at Dragonmeet they basically sold or distributed about 25 issues and said they only had 100. So some people are curious about that kind of fact. So they had a print run of about 100 for issue 3. Maybe that was issue 2, was what they would have been given away. I'm not sure. Then he talks about another one called Orc Torque. And so he has Orc Torque number 5, a very poorly produced special stopgap free zine. And it says if the quality of this 16-page A4 issue is anything to go by, the normal A5 is probably, well, not very good. Little artwork is evidence here. Headings are handwritten. Spelling is only okay. And very little, he said, of use to anyone else. Demon Straw, he continues to sort of refer to this one as the premier fanzine at the time. Definitely the best one, and he continues to just sort of sing its praises. School for Scandal, Trev Mindham's rumor-mongering news sheet. Short, 8 A4 pages, and cheap, only £1. But he says full of rumors and scandals from the hobby and play-by-mail hobby, nominations for awards and so forth. So he sort of says just to read and get sort of like, inside information about what's going on. He thought it was worth doing. Then there's one called The Impaler, Mark Stockton's zine, which has had a few reasonable articles published in he has had other stuff published in other zines. And I wonder why he didn't put them in this one. And the print quality is not great, artwork is sparse, but the articles are okay. AD&D stuff, other reviews, discussion of hero games, etc. So one of the best sort of zine reviews of any that I've done so far, just in terms of the breadth and the information you get about other fanzines. For me, for someone who's a collector, a lot of information. I probably have 5 or 6 new fanzines to write on my list of things I need to start looking for that I don't have any copies of or enough copies of so far. But wait, then you turn the page. Now we have more fanzine reviews. The Fiery Cross, we talked about that one last time. And he likes the Fiery Cross quite a bit, thinks it's a good one. Hocus Pocus. This is a zine I reviewed last issue, but kind of harshly. Their first issue came out because they started at issue 0. And I can't really say it has improved much. There is more artwork, the layout is better, but the contents are weak. Next, The Green Goblin. I think I have 1, 2, and 3 of this, and I think I talked to the editor of this one. I think he said there might be 20 some of these total, so I got to keep looking for these. This is a fanzine from John Breakwell. Very good value for the money, good articles, some good artwork, and then he thinks this one is probably, shows a lot of promise. Balrog Banter, another new zine. Not as impressive as Green Goblin, mostly bad artwork, average AD&D, Warhammer, and other contents. I, fortunately, just picked up a nearly complete set of the Balrog Banters. I've got all the fanzines, but they also had supplements with scenarios in them, and I'm missing one of those. But so I'm pretty excited to be able to put that in my collection. And then Runestone. This was issue 7, came out late. I think there are 8 of those, and I have all of them. And Runestone obviously is focused on RuneQuest. Okay, that's a lot. There's the article, there's the advertisement. Here's their stuff about how to contribute, subscribe, and so forth, as well as the different people who contribute. And it is interesting in the back. He does, one of the few people who's done this, he gives credit for every single illustration. He tells you which page that artist's stuff is on. So it's very precise, and which is nice because a lot of times you can't tell who's done which piece of artwork. Speaking of artwork, and I'll get myself out of the way, let's just take a look at some of the art that's in here. Whoops. We've got the orange sauce monster, spaceship, this guy who's a sci-fi looking guy. This is from the Bushido. I had to look because she does not look like a geisha to me, but that's apparently what she was supposed to be. This is Hudson Shaw. If you've seen a lot of my videos, you should be familiar with what his artwork looks like. And we've got this knight, another Hudson Shaw, and then this guy says your dinner is in the oven. There's some devil who's come home. Here's some more. I like the one on the left here, the gelatinous cube on holiday. Looks like he's getting a little bit of a sunburn there. Then there's some book with some runes on the front and this giant sea creature that's wrapped up around a boat. And then again, just some miscellaneous art that's in here from these folks. This one was kind of funny. Come to hell for the summer. It's warmer than Skegness, I think is what it says. Whoops. And then we've got some sci-fi guns. This little samurai looking person was from the Sci-Fi Traveler campaign as well. And then there's this little fairy, maybe sprite, some sort, reading Orc's Revenge. And just some more artwork. This is the rear cover, and it is done by Morris Williams. You can see that a little bit better here. It just looks like a knight on his horse from behind. I think it looks like he's riding towards the army, but maybe he's turned back to look at his army. Can't tell for sure. Okay, so that's our look at Orc's Revenge number 3. I've got 5 of these. At this point, I think what happens is that they lose their momentum and stop making them, but maybe there are more than 5. I've never seen these anywhere other than when I picked them up. So I'm going to try and do a little more research and find out if there are in fact more than 5. I have 5, so we'll do a couple more before we move on. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope you're enjoying this series, and I hope you're subscribed. If you have friends who might enjoy this content, please send them our way. We're continuing to build our community. I hope you guys have a great Friday, have a great weekend, and until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.